Hello and welcome to this presentation on Me Too in athletics, which is about creating awareness to avoid naivety and potential targeting. So as you're about to see, it is a topic that I am very passionate about and I'm determined to help to tackle.
Yeah, they were, just one of, sorry, yeah, just
No,
there's
no,
just one time on the camp where I can kind of see now that I think one of the girls was trying to say something and let me know, and I was just so oblivious.
So that's an excerpt from a BBC documentary that I helped to make with Charlie Webster, who she's actually a former training partner. She went on to make a name for her in make a name for herself in sports broadcasting, so Sky Sports, etc. But I didn't realise that despite the fact we shared lifts to training together, we went to the same school, obviously trained together several times a week, I didn't realise that she was being abused by our coach at the time. And it wasn't just her as well. And the girl that I am alluding to in this particular snip, yeah, you know, we were very close. We shared rooms on training camps, etc. And I talk about trying to, combat naivety. And I mentioned there about the girl trying to tell me, in hindsight, that all was not right. And although it was subtle, the thing she said to me was, did I think it was strange that our coach only coached girls? And this is not to say that coaches that only coach girls are dodgy. Okay, I know of some that are very wonderful people that only coach girls, but it was the fact that she was saying that she was almost trying to make me aware that there wasn't something quite right with him, and I just didn't think to probe deeper. And again, in hindsight, there were some other things that, had I known more and had I not been so blinded, I guess, by our coach, and who we thought that was this amazing guy, had I recognized some of his sort of more arrogant traits as well, that I think I would have been much more clued up. So this is not about scaremongering here now or making people paranoid, but it's just highlighting some red flags, some signs, some times where it might be worth just probing a little bit more deeply, just to make sure that the girls are just, or anybody, not just girls, it can happen to boys as well, but just to make sure that young vulnerable people are safe and that we make this sport the wonderful place that it should be, and not a breeding ground for predators. So why it's crucial to be made aware of the existence and forms of sexual harassment, but also of their consequences. So we'll look at that first. Then what stops us from addressing it? How to end. Normally at this point I say end or endure something, but there, in no way, shape or form should you ever have to endure it, okay? There are ways and means of dealing with this, which I'll hopefully highlight a lot of those in this presentation. Okay, so first of all, the existence and the different forms of it. So the definition, according to the Citizens Advice Bureau, is sexual harassment is unwanted behaviour of a sexual nature which violates your dignity and makes you feel intimidated, degraded, or humiliated. So I think there is a key point to mention here, because different people have different almost boundaries, I guess, when it comes to this. So whereas to some people it might feel like flirtation or banter, to others, it really, and the phrase I like to use is, if it really makes your skin crawl, if it's unwanted, then that is a time where you are within your rights, and it's very important that you don't just take it. Okay, because sometimes, like, there's these small little almost tests and floating of situations and issues and occurrences that can lead on to something more serious. So it's about you being honest with yourself and then being open with others to deal with the situation. And it's unique to you, so don't feel like you are in the wrong there. Okay, you have to speak your truth. So some of the types of harassment here. I'm just going to allow you to pause and read through these if you like, but not all of them are physical. Okay, so sexual abuse is the physical side of things, but yeah, sometimes it can just be in language or in inferences, and yeah, other sort of sneaky ways really of introducing a sexual element to something. And really, there's no place for that in a coach athlete relationship. That there really isn't. Like, much of this can also be applied to your everyday life as well, what you might experience at school or in relationships, like outside of school with your peers. But yeah, the same thing applies there. Okay, if it's unwanted, if it makes your skin crawl, then it's not good. Not only for you to not say something, but it's about creating a culture of not accepting behavior from people that just see it as something like almost like nonchalant. Oh, you know, whatever. Oh, it's fine. I wasn't anything. Okay, males and females do respond very differently to things of a sexual nature. So I'm not saying it's all men that are the perpetrators, it's all women are the victims, but 95% of the time it is. So that's why I'm using these terms, and I am just generalizing in that respect. But for men, sexual behavior is much more or in encounters are much more of a physical nature. For women, it's much more of an emotional element. So our reactions can often be a lot stronger, whereas a man might think we're overreacting because it's not like that for them. We need to feel safe, and we need to feel respected, like we're not just going to be suddenly dumped after something. And there's evolutionary reasons for that, well, which I'll not go into now. But yeah, you know, don't just think because a man or a masculine person, let's say, or someone that identifies as male, just because they think that it's you know, it's nothing, it doesn't mean that it is. Okay, so the effects over time of this, and it can be in just gradual, insipidus, yeah, where it sort of like gradually wears away at you, or it can be something that's really quite sort of sudden as well, in more kind of serious sudden cases. But the effects, there are so many, and they're so wide ranging. So there's a lot of emotional ones, obviously, as I mentioned before, particularly for females or more feminine characters. They're going to experience a lot more of these sort of things. Mental effects there as well. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and then physical as well here. So something to note about these things is that if you do see a difference in somebody else, for example, or even if you experience something yourself, you might suddenly get angry at something, and it might be about something else down the line. Okay, but that is your kind of opportunity to vent that. So whilst you're not getting angry in the moment about some sexual harassment, you might get angry about somebody who bumps into you on the bus, for example. I don't know, yeah, where it will seem like it is out of proportion. But actually it's just that sort of repressed anger that is expressing itself in a different situation. So again, anytime you see things like this and overreactions, it's definitely worth probing as to if there is something that it lies beneath it. So yeah, as I say, lots and lots of repercussions there that it's important to be aware of. Now, there's an organisation called Kiniska Advocacy, and they do a lot of really, really valuable work in this area. They are very much into lobbying around change at a more legislative level, and they've done some great stuff already. But this is taken from a toolkit that they created for if an athlete feels like they do want to come forward with any allegations, but also to make people more aware of the signs, I guess, of it. So here, do follow them on social media because they do put out a lot of valuable information as well. But some of the, I guess, these are more sort of behavior type patterns. Yeah. So we've already talked about the sleep and then the anger, the outbursts, the eating, the secretive, being secretive, unexplained gifts. So yeah, pause this and have a read through it yourself. And as I say, I will provide a link to this later on as well in the presentation. So just to go back to my friend Katie that I allude to in the BBC snip, she started to get really bad stomach ache. And I just thought, oh, maybe it's stitch, maybe it's some kind of digestive issues. But yeah, that was how it manifested with her. She was obviously just holding a lot of tension and emotion in her like digestive system, which things like IBS, for example, happen when you are very anxious, and definitely it can be prompted by something like sexual harassment or, in her case, abuse. Okay, so what stops us from addressing it? So a survey here from the UK Sport Culture Health Check in 2020 said that athletes who witnessed and or experienced unacceptable behaviour, only 39% formally reported the behaviour, and only 22% of those who reported believed it was dealt with satisfactorily. Okay. So just to say, just because these figures are low does not mean that you should therefore be quiet, okay? Because being quiet is being complicit. And whereas you might not think, oh, it wasn't that serious, so it happened with me, yeah, those are just steps towards something much more serious. So the sooner you can stop it within its tracks and not worry about seeming like you're overreacting, okay, then the sooner you can save yourself and others from some really horrific and traumatic experiences. So you do not have to put up with any kind of behaviour that is inappropriate. You just don't. The reason why then we don't often address it, naivety. You can't believe that someone would be so evil, and lack of experience. So that was very much my reaction. So when allegations first came out against our coach, I was like, well, there must be some mistake. Yeah, I thought I knew him. I'd done one-to-one sessions with him. I'd been in a car with him by myself, etc. I was like, I would be able to see some signs, surely. At the time, I wasn't aware of any other coaches or instances of coaches abusing athletes. More and more ones are coming out now, and very historical cases as well. So hopefully people are less naive these days, but it's not to say that it doesn't still happen, because it still very much does. So yeah, to a certain extent, their naivety can be understood, but yeah, this is why I'm doing this presentation, so that you can kind of see that actually there are some people, they're very different to you. Their minds work very differently, and we should not just give people the benefit of the doubt if there is something suspicious there that needs probing. So another reason, particularly with victims, is they tend to freeze. They just, with fear and anxiety, it's just too much and they just don't know what to do. It's just almost such a shock again, because it's like, what's happening? Oh my gosh, like, I don't understand. I didn't think like this person was like that. Yeah, so they just freeze. There's an element as well, because they're very manipulative, these predators. They do start to engender this sense of loyalty and trust, and respect from you, such that you just feel like you would be betraying them if you did say something. So yeah, you know, your sort of dedication to your training as well, for example, even in an element of forgiveness there, maybe sometimes you might feel like, oh, it's easier just to sort of forgive than it is to actually deal with this. Okay. So yeah, but it's not to say that those are good values and virtues here, guys, that they are very misplaced because you have been manipulated as such. So playing on those more evolutionary parts of our brain now, coaches might play on your insecurities. You're highly aspirational and impressionable. Okay, you really want athletics to feature in your life. You want to do well. Your self-worth might rely on it to a certain extent, and therefore they are the key to that. You're young, so you know you don't have that life experience. You don't have a gauge as to what is acceptable and not acceptable to a certain extent when you're younger. There's a creation of dependency on a coach. Like I say, again, for that sort of, they are the key to your dreams quite often. Fear of losing opportunities, funding, and deselection. So unfortunately, quite often, coaches can be in quite powerful positions in that respect. And yeah, you can't rely on people in charge to make fair decisions often. Well, maybe it's a bit unfair to say often, but again, it's that you would expect that would be the case. But often these powerful positions will attract people who are a bit unscrupulous. I once was coached by a selector of teams, and he said, never trust a selector, even though he was a selector himself, because he says he's seen what goes on in those selection meetings. So you have to select yourself, okay, and just perform as best you can, so that the unscrupulous nature of these people, it can be overridden. Obviously, this is a slightly different situation here now. And it's not to say become as good an athlete as possible, so that even if you are abused, you'll still be selected. Okay. Yeah, it's not about that. It's just to try and highlight that there's some unscrupulous people. Okay. And then with regard to the monkey part of our personalities, I've put here that even though it's the more aggressive part of our personalities, when confronted with another very aggressive monkey, so i.e. A coach who is doing this sort of abuse, is very likely to be a nasty piece of work, basically, and have a very big ego, and would be very willing to attack if they are questioned. So you might not feel strong enough to be able to stand up to that. And then also it's the social part of our personality. So there's this real fear around not being believed or of being rejected. Yeah, we have a very strong troop drive where we are social beings. We need that connection with other people. And you know, if making allegations is going to put that at risk, then it's going to really sort of detract from your will to do it. Just thinking back to Katie, yeah, you know, she didn't want to kind of lose the friends in her group, for example. It really, really pains me to say as well that she didn't come forward because of her loyalty to me, because she thought that because I was the best athlete at the time, you know, on paper with times in the group. And she thought that it would negatively affect my career if she exposed our coach. So needless to say, that should definitely not have factored. And yeah, I would have stood, yeah, you know, when I found out, I did stand by it very, very strongly. And yeah, it was never a consideration of me where, for me, like, oh yeah, I don't want to lose my coach kind of thing. Yeah, I was straight away when I found out. Yeah, I did not want anything to do with him. And he wasn't that good a coach anyway. He just had this huge ego. So yeah, just don't buy into that, because they will be very arrogant in that respect as well, quite often. As I put here, they have this hero complex, both in themselves. They feel like they're a bit untouchable, but other people sometimes see them as untouchable as well. And this is not to scaremonger, because there's a lot of very good people out there that volunteer and coach, but it can be quite easy access to impressionable, young, vulnerable people that might do sport. And so yeah, it's almost easier for predators to be able to reach people through sports. In some ways, but as I say, it's definitely doesn't mean that everyone's like that. It really doesn't. Okay, so how we can really start to change the culture around this, how we can end sexual harassment, or really go, as you know, hopefully really start to make some changes. As I say, obviously, like, you can't, well, technically you can, but like, yeah, it's very difficult to completely wipe it out, but we can make it a lot harder. We can save people a lot sooner, and we can give people the strength to stand up, as well, those that are experiencing it. And it's not to say that they're not strong if they don't stand up, yeah, because there's different circumstances. A lot of the people that our coach preyed on in our group, you know, they came from broken families, you know, they didn't quite have that sort of family support there. Yeah, sorry, I'm just waffling a bit now, but yeah, we you know, we can make changes, and your voice really does matter. So speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. So just going back then to the more helpful parts of our personality. Okay, so if we can get the more logical part of our brain, the intelligent part of our brain, wise part of our brain, to be educated about the prevalence, so that we're not naive, and about the signs as well, so what to look out for. And then also knowing what to do in that situation as well, if you're experiencing it, or if you've witnessed it, or if you are suspecting it. And then I've put here, so before it was freeze, okay, but there is flight, then fight. So you get away and then you deal with the situation. It is not advised just to deal with it in that moment, okay, of you either experiencing it or I don't know, actually. It does depend. It depends so much, but in general, guys, I think it pays to flight then fight. Yeah. And then just being alert. So again, not naive, being brave. It really, really does take a lot of courage to come forward about these things. But you can do it. You can. And determination and honesty as well. Okay, the time's up. That's what we've got to make happen. Trust but validate here. Okay. So again, it's not scaremongering. Most people are trustworthy, but we need to be able to validate that. So I've put here, seek extra reassurance such as DBS checks, safeguarding and qualifications and policies, and references. I think possibly even more powerful than this is just talking to other people as well. Just getting a really broad understanding of what a coach is like, so former athletes that they might have coached. And yeah, because there are some more recent cases that I've come across where some people have left a training group because of inappropriate behaviour, but then others have joined and they've not been aware of that behaviour. So, you know, just doing your homework, I guess. It is a bit more difficult to know what kind of qualifications at the moment that a coach has or what sort of checks they have. But one of the things that Kiniska Advocacy are lobbying for is a coach's register, where this sort of information is much more widely available, not just within a certain sport as well, across all different sports. Because what sometimes can happen is that a coach might get banned from one sport and then they can move to another. And again, similar situation with countries as well, whereas this almost universal register will make that much easier. And clubs should have these checks in place, but sometimes people can slip through the net, and sometimes the checks don't necessarily pick up on things. Well, they can't pick up on things that they don't know about. So yeah, we have to have our own discernment there as well. So just avoid being suspicious and cynical of everyone. But again, it comes back to that not being naive. Speak up. I know this is really hard, having spoken to victims. Yeah. It's not to say that it can't be done if they are aware of the support that is available out there. Ideally, we would want to stop them in their tracks before they do these things. But just going back to that big monkey and that hero complex, so often they're so deluded that they will do things anyway. And it's very hard to stop them from being deluded and from trying things. But I think we can deter them the more that there is evidence of people speaking up, the more there is evidence of punishments and bans and even prison sentences, as was the case with our coach. So that's why, again, we have to keep talking about this. You know, you can confide in teammates, hopefully family, you have a supportive family around you, child protection officer at your club or school. So eventually Katie confided in the child protection officer at her school, and then they took things forward from there. The police also as well. So I've put here, get evidence. Now, in this day and age, with things like mobile phones, they went around back when I was training with my group. It is much more possible for you, as difficult as it might be at times, it is still possible to get evidence. So, you know, I mentioned about sort of the coaches being a bit deluded. There's quite a few coaches that have been prosecuted on the basis of inappropriate text messages that they've been sending. And they don't kind of see those as sort of sexual harassment, even though they are. And maybe they don't realise as well that can be used as very hard evidence against them. So don't delete texts and messages, okay? Yeah, but build a case as much as you can, just so that you can have much more chance of stopping these people in their tracks. Yeah, the only reason I'm hesitating there about get evidence, because, you know, if you can record something, then that's the strongest possible evidence. But, you know, it's not to necessarily say put yourself in that position where you have to be that uncomfortable to be able to get that sort of evidence. But just bear it in mind anyway. Yeah. And then there's a lot of professional help out there, particularly the NSPCC, run a lot of campaigns around this. They have helplines, there's Childline as well, trauma specialists as well in this area, that there's various books and things like that out there as well that you can read. And again, just harking back to Kiniska Advocacy, they have what they call their survivors, and they offer support to them, and it's more kind of sport specific, I guess, as well there. So yeah, and I've put like trauma specialists as well, because so often there is that more like deep damage that has been done when you have been violated. And so to really get to the root of that and to process that properly so that it doesn't then manifest itself, you know, later down the line in other unhelpful behaviors is so important. So again, just to make you aware of some of the red flags to look out for in coaches. So although a lot of these can't be used as hard evidence, they are signs, as I say. So this is taken from a social media post from Kiniska, and they say that I'll put the red flags up in a minute, but first of all, each of these signs indicate that a sexual, emotional, or physical abuse may be happening. Within sport, abuse can be difficult to detect. Athletes push themselves physically and mentally to achieve their goals. As such, abuse may go unnoticed or determined to be normal to perform at a high level. Okay, so the coach might try and tell you that you're being soft if you don't absorb their abuse, I guess. Signs of abuse are not always obvious, and one of these signs on its own does not mean that abuse is happening. However, it is important to be aware of them. Every warning sign and concern should be taken seriously and can be reported. So again, this athlete toolkit here that I linked to, that gives you a pathway of how to report something. So do, by all means, look at that. So these are some of the red flags. Physical affection, talking negatively about an athlete with others. Overly interested in sexual development, making sexual jokes online or offline with an athlete. Favoritism towards one athlete, paying for things like physio or massage treatments, insisting on alone time with an athlete. So just to finish then, this is a final excerpt from the documentary where Charlie talks a little bit more about the implications.
Just takes people to have those like courageous conversations and not just sort of think, oh, you know, I'll just ignore that. Yeah, because that's just what's been happening for too long.
It has. I feel like I'm not just there banging the drum and knocking the door and saying things need to change, but actually it's like there's a group of us here that's like, this is not happening anymore.
Collective voice.
Yeah, so thank you.
We're right behind you.
I just want to make sure nobody else goes through it. That's what I just want it to do. And people to understand why. To really understand why this has to stop. And the people that ignore or cover up, this is what you're ignoring and covering up.
So just to add to that, I've mentioned Katie a few times in this presentation, and yeah, she committed suicide a few weeks ago, and basically she experienced the abuse as a teenager. It started off as little innocuous things, which then led on to very, very serious things that she just absorbed, and over time just degraded her self-worth. And then as she finally very bravely came forward and got him convicted and saved many girls as a result of that, because he didn't just stop at Katie, he didn't get his fix there. He moved on to a number of other girls in the group. So she was a real hero in coming forward, but her self-worth had been so damaged that for the rest of her life she would absorb abuse from other people and get herself, no, I don't want to say get herself in situations because it sounds like I'm blaming her, but she would find herself in situations that she would just get stuck in because she didn't feel like she deserved more. And she could only take so much. And yeah, she couldn't take it in the end. And it was just a lot of damage that was done over the years. And this is why it has to stop. This is why we have to stop it. In the early stages as well, the seemingly insignificant things are the significant things. So don't be afraid to come forward. Don't be afraid to start making a case. Don't be afraid to question things. And don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because you matter and your voice really matters. So yeah, let's start to make change, guys. Let's keep doing the work.